Welcome, everybody. Happy to have everybody here today. So, today we're going to be talking about a serious topic. We're going to be talking about how we are at war. So, we are at war, and this isn't a conversation like you might find or you might think. So, please stay tuned to the very end so that you get the whole picture of what's really going on here. I'm going to be sharing with you a perspective that's coming from another place. And it's really not any different than this place, but a lot of people aren't living in this perception, don't have the clarity to see this. And this is why, in these times, it's very important to look to people that have more of an outside meta view for whatever reason that they're experiencing life that way. It's really good to turn to these people that can see the whole picture. Because when we are limited in our personal self, we see everything very hard, very difficult. I posted a video the other day. It was about judgment, and it was really not relating to anything regarding what's going on in the outside world, but it could be taken that way, or it could be taken whatever way. It is about judgment. Judgment comes from within. But for whatever reason, there was a different comments on there. And for one, there was a comment that is judgment too? Is it too idealistic? Is this video just too idealistic? And I certainly can see that side of things because I've been there. I'm a human being just like you, and I have been through many things in life. And of course, I can see the side of how judgment and dropping it can be looked at as very idealistic. So, out of compassion, I completely understood his side, and I can see that because I've been there. That only really happens that you think that judgment is too idealistic or dropping judgment is too idealistic when we are too identified in the personal self. When we are very identified in being someone, having certain beliefs, having certain judgments already that are already there, it is, of course, very hard to drop these judgments. This is our conditioning, this is our programming, and that is not easy to drop. So, unless you have a perspective shift, something happening that radically changed your life, that's not going to be very easy to see through. And so, I completely understand that, and I have complete compassion for it. But there's still a need for a conversation like this because this is the truth, this is reality. So, we can play into the games of that judgment is you know, always going to be here and that judgment or dropping judgment is idealistic. We can play into those games, but I will not play into those games very much longer. The thing I will do is give compassion for that. Like I say, I understand that point of view, I understand that feeling, and I have certainly been there. So, my love goes out to you. But the truth has to be spoken, and someone has to speak it. There are many people speaking this truth right now, and so for those that have ears to hear, may they listen to this. And so, what I'm talking about here is how really all of this, exterior chaos that we're seeing in the world, if you're seeing that, is really coming from a place of within. So when we work on ourselves, when we heal ourselves, when we love ourselves, then the world is healed. Then the world is loved. Everything that is happening here is what we see on the outside. And there's a lot there. I've talked about my personal journey in a video about dying to the self. If you'd like to watch that, I will link that down below as well. And in this video, I talk about everything that I went through. Not everything in detail, but you can certainly feel the energetics of it. That it is it is a process. There's a lot that happens. There's a lot that comes up. There's a lot of surprises. There's a lot of releasing. There's a lot happening there. Now, for me, a lot of that stuff just happened very naturally. It wasn't something that I tried to make happen. I wasn't very much into seeking or anything like that. So these things can naturally just happen as we go through life. So what happens is we go through life a lot of times just consuming, taking in, trying to understand what's happening here, and just looking to others to find our way. And we take the advice of our parents, our grandparents, society, maybe our boss, our teachers, those people that we look to for guidance, those authority figures. So we follow these people and we go and we do and try to make our own life based on kind of their blueprints. And then it comes a time that we understand and we learn that that's not working for us because what worked for them is not who we, what worked for them worked for them. They aren't who we are. We're very unique and different individuals. And that's where we begin to go into this level of pain, of confusion, of depression, of sorrow, of just fighting. And this is a lot, oftentimes called the dark night of the soul. And so in here, we're battling things. And right now, in humanity and what we're seeing play out in our world, we are in this dark night of the soul. A while back, I was just relaxing, kind of taking a bath and meditating, sort of. And what happened was I had a vision, and I had a vision where I could see myself as a child and just see different times in my life. And I was going through that, and it was showing me a lot of insights. But then it came to a time more recent where we had this whole thing playing out with COVID. And so when that happened, and I started to view that timeline, I noticed a complete shift, and it looked like very similar to the shift that I was seeing in my childhood and different times in my life that had caused exponential amounts of growth. So what was seen here was that when COVID happened, that was actually sort of like something that needed to be released within the collective. It was a time of kind of sickness, of illness, of kind of what you would imagine kind of happened with me. In my journey, I suddenly had very high blood pressure. I didn't know what was happening. I had a lot of different symptoms, things happening. Nobody knew what. It stopped me. I couldn't really work. I couldn't really function. I had anxiety. I had to go to doctors, all of these things. That's what this COVID was. And so it kind of stops you, right? We were all stuck at home, and we had to be. That's what we were told to do. So when that happens, what happens? You turn inwards and you really have this introspection. And that's what happens in the dark night of the soul as well. So when I was sick and all of these things happened, I had nothing else to do but to stop and rest. And what happened? You lay down in bed, and all of a sudden, everything, your whole life is being replayed, and you're having thoughts, and all of these things are happening. So, what happened when I continued on the timeline of COVID, when I was having this vision, was that I noticed a huge shift and growth. And it seemed like humanity was kind of wanting to stay on this new timeline that was changing. And what was shown and seen to me was that it would never be the same. Things were now changing, and what was once thought of this way is now flipped. It's completely changed. So, it's a new opening for a new way of being. Now, what's happening and continues to happen since then and has been happening throughout all time is that there are patterns that we have adopted within ourselves, like the conditioning, like the beliefs, the dogmas that we adopt from the people around us, the culture, everything that we are surrounded with. All of these things we take in and believe. Now, this happens in the collective as well. So, everyone in the world there's cultures, there's just areas, regions, and they take in and have their own beliefs and ways of being, and those get passed on generation to generation. At some point, those beliefs and dogmas and things don't really resonate anymore to the younger generations that are being born. That's what we're starting to kind of see, is that a lot of these conflicts from the past are bubbling up to be resolved. But the people involved a lot of times are no longer tied to these things. There's a shift happening, and it's going to be painful because there's this part of it that's wanting to evolve into the butterfly. So if you watch my video, you'll understand the butterfly that are starting to evolve into that, but there's still this conflict that has not been resolved. Yes, it's conflict from the past. Yes, it's conflict from years back. Yes, it's conflict from religious texts and beliefs and ideas and things that happened in history that happened then, but they're coming to be released. They're coming up to be released and healed. And so that's the same thing that happens within us. And if you watch that video that I linked down below, or if you watch that, you realize the correlation here. So we can believe, we can tap into what we truly are and snap out of this whole thing. But for the collective, for all of humanity to do that, is so much harder than working on ourselves. So I'm going to share with you something else that these things may not make sense to you, but if they energetically resonate or if you pick up something from it, that is all that is needed here. And what doesn't resonate, just drop. So we're talking about everybody else around us? How is it that how are they going to turn inwards and all of them solve their issues? We're always thinking about their issues. They're the ones that have the issue. They're the ones that are stuck in the past. They're the ones that believe the wrong thing. They're doing this. So we're pointing our fingers at all of these people, and we're not realizing that we are in connection to all of this. And even greater than that, that is a projection of what's happening within us. So we're pointing fingers when we should be pointing within. So this is what I want to share with you. So I was also having another vision the other day. As I was relaxing. This is something that happens to me quite regularly now. So I was relaxing and I had different things come through, basically just a lot of peace and different things. But I began to see this cup, this glass, and it was a glass, and it was tied to a verse that, not exactly a verse, but yeah, a verse from what Jesus had explained in the Bible about a cup, a glass. And it was something to the effect of that when the glass is dirty, or whatever is dirty with the glass, if glass is dirty, if we clean the inside, the outside will be clean as well. Now, that doesn't seem to sort of make sense, does it? Like if you just drop a glass. And so the vision that I had, so I had that come through. First, I had that, those words come through. And then I had a glass literally come up, and the imagination, what was happening with him, he said, pick up the glass, throw it into the mud. And so I picked up the glass and I threw it into the mud. As I picked up the glass was all dirty on the outside, and it was dirty. And so I was told to fill it up with water, to drink water from it. And so I looked at it and I thought, no, I can't drink water from this. And so I used what I have just said, the information I had just given. And so the information that had just been given, which was my higher self speaking to me, was to clean the inside of the glass, to try this experiment. So I took something and I cleaned the inside of the glass, cleaned it out, cleaned it, and then I poured my water in it. And even though the outside of the glass was still dirty, I drank the water. And the water was clean, and the water was good, and the water was nourishing, and I felt nourishment and I felt love. And so what was the connection there? What I got was that the water, when it is clean, when you clean the inside, as long as there's water there, then that is love, that is peace, and that is nourishing you in the moment. You may think the outside is so hard to clean, but as you clean the inside, you instantly begin to feel the nourishment and the love. And as you do that, you have more love, more energy to go clean the outside. And the outside becomes clean naturally. So what happens is your nourishment that's happening, the love, which is the water, automatically gives you clarity of your perception of the outside world. And so you're able to better discern it. I talked in my last video about how judgment switches around, turns around, and becomes discernment. It no longer is what it was before. My dog is playing with me. So it's no longer what it was before. We discern now. And so I also had an email come through about how some people, or this person, was finding it very hard to discern. So that's not something that will naturally happen. It is something that you can naturally have happen as things begin to shift and change with you, as you begin to have a different perspective. But then over time, what will happen is if you just naturally start discerning, it'll just become natural to you, just part of your habit of how you approach decision making and how you approach, situations that come up and arise for you. So with discernment, that is one thing that will shift and change. Now, all of a sudden, rather than cleaning the outside so much, we're now worried. We're not worried, but we're now focusing on discerning. So it's not so much of, oh, we have to change him and this person and that person because they're wrong and they need to change. No, now we're discerning. Now we are trying to understand them because now we understand ourselves. Now that we've cleaned the inside of our glass and we understand how cleaning the inside of our glass works, then we can understand and be more of a light for others. So that's something that just happens as we do this process, as we live this process where we go within. So everything is happening within. I know you're tired of hearing about that, but the reason you're hearing about it so much and you're seeing it in so many different places is because that is the absolute truth. And the problem is when I get messages or I see people or people are talking about how it is so hard to be loving towards others when you see them doing X, Y, and Z. Yes, that hurts. It feels like something isn't right, right? That's how it feels, like something isn't right here. This doesn't seem natural. And you're right, it isn't natural. So what happens there is just something's playing out with that person, just like something was playing out with you. Something's playing out in that region of the world. Something is playing out wherever. But you have to realize everything is here and now in this moment with you, and you are experiencing this. So everything that's happening around outside is really just a reflection of yourself. So there is a lot about this also, in the Bible, talking about judgment and all of that. So if you want to look into that, if you want to research some of those verses and stuff, they're actually very enlightening. They're actually very helpful in understanding how we should really turn inward rather than going outwardly. So there's also something that Jesus had spoke about. Rather than pointing out the speck in another person's eye, pull out like the plank or the big stick in our eye, because there's always something. If we're seeing something within something else, if we're seeing something on the outside that we're judging, like that we're pointing and we're saying that's wrong and this is wrong, that usually means, and that always means, there is something in our eye. So we have to look inward. And as we take that out of our eye, all of a sudden we see clearly and we can discern instead of judge. And then we can transmute everything back into love. We can have more understanding and we can abide in love. And everything will begin to change. So look at that man in the mirror. Look within to see the beautiful world without. We got to go inward. So I hope that this sheds a little bit of clarity among a lot of the things that are happening right now, whether it's within you or with the outside world, but realizing that there is no separation between yourself and the outside world. That's another big point here. There is no separation. A lot of times we separate ourselves. Oh, we are right. We believe the right things. We are part of this religion, or we believe this, or we are this part of this region. There is no regions. There is no rights or wrongs. There is just what's happening. And there is everything here and now in this moment. It's not separate. There's not separate places. There's not separate people. There's not separate anything. Everything is one here and now. The personal self, the divine self is one. So I'm talking about this topic from a divine view. From a divine view. And that's the kind of view that we should look to answers right now. So this divine view, sometimes it's so hard to see from this viewpoint because it is literally right behind your eyes. It is what you are. What you're looking through is exactly what I'm talking about. And you're not recognizing it because you're so identified with the personal, individual self. But you are one with the divine. As soon as you see that link, as soon as you see that seamless connection that has always been there, then all of a sudden you step into love. All of a sudden you step into freedom. All of a sudden judgment drops and love arises for all. And you understand why things are playing out the way that they're playing out. You understand this game and you understand it's just a game. You understand the polarities. You understand why there is that and how that aids in unconditional love and how that is just part of this game. So everything is in control. You are loved. Everything is at peace. And if you don't feel that peace, go within. Go within. Release that. Even for a moment, release, let it go. Feel into this freedom. It's always here and now with you. No matter what's happening, it's always here and now with you. You're not separate from it. You're part of it. You are it. Step into your power. You have it all here and now. I love you all.